And welcome to today's edition of Dr. Carol's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Well, let me tell you about today's show. First of all, it's called Latest Would-Be Assassin Was Sick. Hear what's wrong with him. So we're going to be talking today about the recent um, would-be assassin, the third attempt on President Trump's life. And let me read you the description. Trump got it right. He said Cole Tomas Allen, the would-be assassin, the latest one, is sick. Today you will hear his manifesto and what's really wrong with him. Your host, Carole Lieberman, MD, that's me, called America's Psychiatrist, puts him on the couch and tells all. Well, I was watching, I don't know if you were, on Saturday night when this whole thing went down. And this was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And there was an extra guest. Well, almost. He didn't quite make it into the ballroom. But Cole Tomas Allen, do you ever notice how these killers often have three names? There must be something psychological about that. Or maybe it's just the media, giving them their whole name to just kind of makes it a little more sensational. Anyhow, Cole Tomas Allen, he's 31 years old, and he came to the White House, well, to the Hilton, the DC Hilton, with the intent of killing the administration. Clearly Trump was number one in terms of his targets. And he got close. He didn't get into the ballroom, but they barely stopped him. He was an incredible runner. I've never seen anyone run that quickly. And he managed to break through a lot of barriers. And apparently he talks about how when he came from California, and I'm going to read his manifesto. And so you'll hear how he really says that there was not much, he was surprised at how little security there was. And the Washington, D.C. Hilton is where Reagan was almost assassinated. There was an attempted assassination on Reagan's life, President Ronald Reagan. So why they keep having these events at that hotel, I don't know. It's they really didn't do a very good. The Secret Service was good, but the hotel security was not, and it was surprising. And fortunately, I want to say first of all, up front, I am grateful that no one was killed. The only person, well, there were two people injured. First of all, one of the Secret Service men who were trying to stop this assassin from getting close to the ballroom. But he was shot at by the assassin, but he was wearing a bulletproof vest. And so he didn't get hurt. He's okay. And the other person who was injured was the assassin himself. He wasn't shot, but Secret Service and perhaps the police, someone in law enforcement, did tackle him and get him to the ground. You may well have seen that photo. Okay, so we're talking about this past Saturday, April 25th, and the assassin, and I'm just going to call him an assassin, not a would-be assassin. I mean, he didn't get to shoot Trump, but I mean, he wasn't uh there's no question that he was trying to do that. Anyhow, he comes from a very interesting family. And there are lots of pictures online of his family, and it looks like the perfect family. First of all, they live in a very nice house. Now he's 31 years old, and he still lives with his parents in this house. And I think maybe some of his siblings do as well. I'm not sure about that part, but he lives in the house with his parents, and um, and he has an incredible education, but he was working at a job that really didn't require that education. There were red flags, and I'm going to tell you about some of those as well. And the point of that is that if you're a parent, now he's 31 years old, I mean, that's an adult, but still, you need to look out for your kids, for anybody in your family. And they should have been able to see there were a lot of red flags, and they should have been able to see them and to do something about it, like send him to a psychiatrist before he got this far and this close. Now, the reason why I say that he is sick, well, when Trump, after the attempted assassination, after the shots rang out, here he was running to the ballroom. They stopped him. They tackled him. He was on the floor. The Secret Service got everybody inside the ballroom down to the floor. They helped them, and they got them out also. And they got Trump out, and they got Melania out, and they got the people who were sitting at the front table, the head table out, and they did a great job of that. But Trump didn't want to leave because at that point he knew that the assassin was down, and he wanted to continue with the dinner, with the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This is a dinner for journalists, an annual dinner for journalists. And he had apparently written a great speech, and he wanted to still give it. So they got everyone out, and then Trump told whoever made an announcement that he wanted to do a press conference. He was going to do that from the White House, and so the time that it took it was about 45 minutes later after the shooting, or I mean, it was a shooting. He shot the security guard, but I mean the Trump security. Um, but so approximately 45 minutes later, Trump held a press conference at the White House. And of course, this made more, it was a, it was helpful to him to be able to say that this is why, or this is one of the reasons why there should be a ballroom. He's constructing a ballroom at the White House, or redoing the ballroom, um, so that there could be much more secure. I mean, this isn't the only reason why he wanted to do it, but he said that there were people in his security detail and military who were saying that the ballroom, or the place where they held press conferences, really isn't as safe as it should be, and there should be a ballroom that can be made very safe. Especially these days with all the increases in technology, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is speaks well for the idea of continuing to build the ballroom, because there is some opposition. People are wondering, why does he need a new ballroom? Um, and so this this is one of the reasons why. It is shocking that the hotel, they were letting people continue to check in even at the time of the dinner. And the would-be assassin, Cole Tomas Allen, was talking about how he was so shocked at some of the things, the lack of security. I mean, you would think that they would have not allowed anybody who wasn't involved with this dinner, anybody that they hadn't checked, um, to be in the hotel, to be a guest in the hotel, because Cole came a day or two before the dinner and just checked in. And he was carrying these weapons with him. That's another thing. They didn't check his weapons, or didn't check his bags. Anyhow, so I'm going to read to you his manifesto. Now, when Trump was on 60 Minutes, he got very angry at Nora McDonald. What's her name? Nora O'Donnell, um, who was interviewing him because she was reading some parts. I don't think she read the whole thing, but she was reading the juiciest parts of the manifesto of this would-be assassin. And Trump got angry because, he didn't think that that was right. So anybody who's been listening to my show knows that I am a fervent Trump supporter. I am the one who has been putting together a diagnostic category, a very detailed diagnosis with all kinds of criteria for Trump derangement syndrome. And I will be bringing that to the American Psychiatric Association very soon, to propose that to them to be put into their next edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. They're up to number 5 now, and they do a new one every some number of years. It kind of varies, but I think they're due for a new one. And I want them to put Trump derangement syndrome in there because there are so I've been collecting names of people who exhibit that, and I have been classifying them in mild, moderate, and severe types of Trump derangement syndrome. And um, and this I have the previous two. Well, there are actually more assassins than we. There have been more assassins than the three that we know. The one in Butler, Pennsylvania, the one on the golf course, and now this one. But there were more before that that really haven't gotten as much attention, or people don't remember them, or something. So I have all these would-be assassins, but I have lots of other kinds of people too, and Jimmy Kimmel is one example because, and I had him in the mild category, but he is moving on up to the moderate or the severe category because he has been nonstop saying awful things about Trump and Melania, and um, and in fact, he said something just recently, a few days before the Saturday night that the dinner was, and let me tell you here. Um, he made a joke. Well, he thought it was funny. I'm sure lots of people in his audience laughed as well, for that matter. Um, but he was talking about, he said, where did I put it? He said, here it is. Okay. Well, I can't find the article, but I do know the story. He being Jimmy Kimmel, said that Melania was looking beautiful, and she was looking like an expectant widow. Expectant widow. Now, what he's after the, of course, this was just a few days before she almost was a widow. And so needless to say, it was in bad taste when he said it, and it became worse taste when it almost came true. So either he knew about the would-be assassin's plans, or um, he just has very bad taste, which we all know already. Anyhow, so now what he's claiming to now that he meant with this expectant widow comment, he claims that he was talking about how Trump is so much older than she is, and so she will likely be a widow at some point in time, hopefully not for many, 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 many years. But that is what he's claiming. Of course, that's easy to say now. He may have, I'm not sure when he said that, but it certainly was it was well, it was when people started attacking him for saying that. Of course, that was after they were laughing about it on his show. Anyhow, so Jimmy Kimmel, oh, I digress. Okay, Jimmy Kimmel. He um he was in my, as I said, he was in my mild cases of Trump derangement syndrome, but he is moving on up to either moderate or severe. And I was actually uh going to be unveiling my categories, diagnoses, all the diagnostic criteria for TDS, um, and bringing it to the American Psychiatric Association. But then the war broke out. And so I have been holding back on that until um, the Iran war. I mean, that's the most important thing going on. So I don't want to take away from that. Okay. So, so I was going to say this was to explain that I'm going to be reading the manifesto, but with a very different point than the host of 60 Minutes. I am not doing it to harass Trump. I'm doing it to point out the things. First of all, to point out how he had a severe case of TDS, and second of all, to point out that these things that he was saying were lies. Okay, so here we go with the manifesto from Cole Thomas Allen. Okay, so Cole Thomas Allen wrote. Now, this is a man, let me just say, in case you don't know, he has uh, two major degrees. He went to Caltech, and he went to another very well-known, very well thought of, well-respected college. And he got, high degrees, engineering degrees, computer degrees. And what he was working currently, well, currently he's in jail, but before the his trip to DC, he was working as someone who tutors students who want to get into college, like for the SATs and that kind of thing, and other similar kinds of students who need tutoring in similar kinds of subjects as what he studied in college himself. So that is a big come down from the degrees that he has, and worked more in the computer and engineering field before. So that was one of the red flags, that there was something going on with him, that he wasn't able to hold that kind of a job. Okay, here comes the manifesto without further ado. Hello, everybody. So I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. So he sent this manifesto to his family, to his brother, and he sent it 10 minutes before he actually broke in, or tried to break into the ballroom. And his brother called the police in Connecticut, where he lives, but that really didn't do anything, because he doesn't say in his manifesto what he's actually going to do. He just gives hints. So the brother couldn't have called the hotel, for example. All right. Hello, everybody. So I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. So that he's assuming that uh he's assuming that I'm getting a notice from the producer here that we have 3 minutes to break. I'm just going to start it. But he was, if I then I will in the we will come back and I will continue. But he was figuring, in other words, that probably people would be reading his manifesto. The media would play his manifesto after they already knew that he had, well, he was hoping that it was going to be after they already knew that he had shot people in Trump and the other people in his cabinet. So, um, hello, everybody. So I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. Let me start off by apologizing to everyone whose trust I abused. This isn't the typical manifesto. I apologize to my parents for saying I had an interview without specifying it was for Most Wanted. I apologize to my colleagues and students for saying I had a personal emergency. By the time anyone reads this, I probably most certainly do need to go to the ER, like he was assuming he was going to be injured in this, but can hardly call that not a self-inflicted status. I apologize to all of the people I traveled next to, all the workers who handled my luggage, and all the other non-targeted people at the hotel who I put in danger simply by being near. I apologize to everyone who was abused and or murdered before this, to all those who suffered before I was able to attempt this, to all who may still suffer after, regardless of my success or failure. Now, that's kind of a couched way of saying what he then goes into. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Dr. Carol's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Today we are talking about the would-be assassin who tried to get into he wasn't invited, but he tried to get into the dinner, the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C. at the Hilton Hotel. And I called today's show Latest Would-Be Assassin Was Sick. Hear what's wrong with him. So Trump in his press conference after everybody came out from the Hilton Hotel and went to the White House for a press conference, he was going on about how this man was sick, crazy. And I agree with him, and I'm saying he called it, that in fact Cole Tomas Allen was sick, and he was primarily sick with Trump derangement syndrome. Okay, so I began reading the manifesto. Now, it was Nora O'Donnell who Trump sort of spoke back to on television, on 60 Minutes, because she read the juiciest parts of the manifesto. Now, I'm going to be reading the manifesto, but not to, harass Trump. Trump isn't here. Um, but it's to analyze the shooter and to say why, some of the things that he says in his manifesto are symptoms of Trump derangement syndrome. So I hope Trump won't be mad at me because there's a different purpose. Okay, um, so he said, so I'm continuing where I left off. I don't expect forgiveness. Now, this is the shooter, well, the would-be assassin's manifesto. This is his voice. And he continued in his manifesto, I don't expect forgiveness, but if I could have been, hmm, if I could have been, like he starts to say something, he would have done something sooner. I was willing a long time ago to do something sooner, but this is the first real opportunity I've had to do something about it. What that's about is before that, he apologized to everybody who was abused and or murdered before this, to all those who suffered before I was able to attempt this, to all who may still suffer. So he's trying to insinuate that Trump and people in his cabinet have caused harm to people, and he's sorry that he couldn't do it sooner. While I'm discussing this, I'll also go over my expected rules of engagement, probably in a terrible format, but I'm not military, so too bad. Administration officials, not including Mr. Patel. Yes, for some reason, he left Patel out of this. And it's, people are trying to figure that out. And I don't know the answer to that, but that's what he's referring to here, that he wasn't planning on killing Mr. Patel. Administration officials, they are targets prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. So highest ranking, would be Trump. Secret Service, they are targets only if necessary and to be incapacitated non-lethally if possible. AKA, I hope they're wearing body armor because center mass with shotguns messes up people who aren't. And he have a shotgun amongst his weapons. So yes, the man was wearing body armor, fortunately. Hotel security, not targets, if at all possible, AKA unless they shoot at me. Like, in other words, these are the people who he's not planning to kill. Capitol Police, same as hotel security. National Guard, same as hotel security. Hotel employees, not targets at all. Guests, not targets at all. In order to minimize casualties, I will also be using buckshot rather than slugs, less penetration through walls. I would still go through most everyone here to get to the targets if it were absolutely necessary, on the basis that most people choose to attend a speech by a pedophile, rapist, and traitor. Now, there is no way that President Trump is a pedophile. Well, what that's about is, he's referring to that Mr. President Trump had something to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, all of the pages of Jeffrey Epstein's books, or, all of his documents are out already. There is nothing in Epstein's documents that implicate Trump. Nothing. And believe me, if there had been anything, you would have been seeing it in the headlines all over the place. There are some people who are trying to make something out of it, trying to claim something, but there is no proof of anything. And in fact, the woman who was the lead victim, um, she was working as a masseuse at Trump's Mar-a-Lago, and he fired her. And he told Jeffrey Epstein that he couldn't come back because he realized, someone must have told him, or I don't know how he realized, but in any case, he found out eventually that this is what was happening, that Epstein had stolen her. Now, how much he knew about what Epstein was using her for is a different story. It's not sure how much he knew, if anything, about that. But Trump himself is not a pedophile, nor is he a rapist, even though that woman, I did not have sex with that woman, E. Jean Carroll, a liar. There is no way. I mean, I'm from New York. I shopped in where was she? Not Bergdorf. Yeah, Bergdorf Goodman's. There is no way in these stores like that. There is no way that somebody could be raped and everybody else on the floor not hearing it. I mean, if she would have let out a peep, there would have been people flocking into the dressing room. That's where she said that he raped her. So that was a total lie. And traitor, I'm not sure why he would say that he's a traitor, but he's not. I mean, this is a man who has been almost killed 3 times. There have been at least three, there have been more, but there were at least three would-be assassins that we know about in current times. And yet he continues to do his job because he wants to make America great again. As corny as that may sound, that is what he's putting himself in danger every single day. Iran has a fatwa out on him. The religious leaders, terrorists, in other words, have a fatwa out on him, a religious edict saying that if anybody who kills him would be honored. They're asking for somebody to kill him, to assassinate him. And then if you do that and you are a terrorist, then you will go to heaven and Allah will give you 72 virgins and other things that you might want. And coupons for Target. I don't know. Um, I mean, this is dark gallows humor. I'm not saying that any of this is funny. As the terrorist therapist, I know about all these things. And they not only did they put a fatwa out to really, that's a real prize for anybody who would do it. That's the highest honor to answer a fatwa. But also they put video of the almost assassination of Trump that happened in Pennsylvania, Butler, Pennsylvania, excuse me. And they put that on state television in Iran. That was to motivate you to this was in addition to the fatwa, to motivate you to finish the job. So he has people, not just the people, that we hear about, but there are people every day gunning for him, literally. And yet he continues to be president because he wants to get a lot of things accomplished. And in part, I think psychologically that he is concerned that he might not get to live out his whole term because someone might be successful. An assassin might actually get to do the job. Um, and so he wants to make sure he gets a lot done before that happens. So he's like going at lightning speed. All right, I know you want to hear the manifesto, not me. Okay. Um, so Um, oh yeah. So okay. Oh, I was saying the things that he called that the would-be assassin called Trump. So I was saying there's no way that he's a traitor. Um, okay. Thus, oh, so he's saying that the people who attended the dinner were complicit. that they must be fans of Trump, although that's not really true. Half the media there were Democrats and half of them were Republicans, approximately half and half of the journalists. And so there were journalists there who hated Trump. They didn't want him killed necessarily, but um, but so it wasn't all Republicans, in other words, who were at the dinner. But I really hope it doesn't come to that, killing other people. Okay. Then he goes through this part in his manifesto that he calls rebuttals to objections. Objection one, that in other words, what he thinks people are going to have as objections to his manifesto and to his plan to assassinate the president and the cabinet. So, objection one, as a Christian, you should turn the other cheek. Rebuttal. Turning the other cheek is for when you yourself are oppressed. I'm not the person raped in a detention camp. I'm not the fisherman executed without trial. I'm not a school kid blown up or a child starved or a teenage girl abused by the many criminals in this administration. Turning the other cheek when someone else is oppressed is not Christian behavior. It is complicity in the oppressor's crimes. Objection two, this is not a convenient time for you to do this. This is, in other words, he's saying what some people could say when they read his manifesto or when they hear about what he did. Rebuttal. I need whoever thinks this way to take a couple of minutes and realize that the world isn't about them. Do you think that when I see someone raped or murdered or abused, I should walk on by because it would be inconvenient for people who aren't the victim? This was the best timing and chance of success I could come up with. Objection three, you didn't get them all. His rebuttal is, gotta start somewhere. Objection four, as a half-black, half-white person, you shouldn't be the one doing this. Rebuttal, I don't see anyone else picking up the slack. Objection five, yield unto Caesar what is Caesar's. So they're comparing Caesar to Trump. Rebuttal. The United States of America are ruled by the law, not by any one or several people. In so far as representatives and judges do not follow the law, no one is required to yield them anything so unlawfully ordered. I would also like to extend my appreciation to a great many people, since I will not be likely to be able to talk with them again, unless the Secret Service is astoundingly incompetent. Thank you to my family, both personal and church, for your love over these 31 years. Thank you to my friends for your companionship over many years. Thank you to my colleagues over many jobs for your positivity and professionalism. Thank you to my students for your enthusiasm and love of learning. Thank you to the many acquaintances I've met in person and online, for short interactions and long-term relationships, for your perspectives and inspiration. Thank you all for everything. Sincerely, Cole Cold Force Friendly Federal Assassin Allen. So he calls himself an assassin, so I'm going to call him an assassin. P.S. Okay, now that all the sappy stuff is done, what the hell is the Secret Service doing? Sorry, gonna rant a bit here and drop the formal tone. Like, I expected security cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo. What I got, who knows, maybe they're pranking me, is nothing. No damn security, not in transport, not in the hotel, not in the event. Like the one thing I immediately noticed walking into the hotel is a sense of arrogance. I walk in with multiple weapons, and not a single person there considers the possibility that I could be a threat. The security at the event is all outside, focused on protesters and current arrivals, because apparently no one thought about what happens if someone checks in the day before. Like, this level of incompetence is insane. He's right about that. And I very and sincerely hope it's corrected by the time this country gets actually competent leadership again. Like, if I was an Iranian agent instead of an American citizen, I could have brought a damn ma deuce in here, and no one would have noticed S-T. Actually insane. So shit. No one would have noticed shit. Actually insane. Oh, and if anyone is curious, is how doing something like feels. I think he meant, and if anyone is curious how doing something like this feels, it's awful. I want to throw up. I want to cry for all the things I wanted to do and never will. For all the people whose trust this betrays. I experience rage thinking about everything this administration has done. Can't really recommend it. Stay in school, kids. A Mod Deuce, by the way, is a Browning M2 50 caliber heavy machine gun, a U.S. military staple for nearly a century, usually tripod mounted. So he was saying if he was an Iranian agent, he would have brought that gun in, which was more powerful than the gun he brought. Well, that's quite a manifesto. You know, it's assuming a lot. I mean, here it's really interesting because um I mean it's very thoughtful. He took time in writing this, and he took time in planning his whole trip, what he was going to do. Um And he apologizes to his family and to friends and et cetera, and then afterwards he talks about them again, and about what he's going to miss, because he's assuming he's either going to be killed, or he's going to be injured severely, or he's going to be dead. He's going to miss out on, or he's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. So he's going to miss out on a lot. And um that's probably right. That's probably what's going to happen. He has already been charged with three different things, and um he will probably spend the rest of his life in jail. The man who, the killer in Butler, was killed by a Secret Service agent who shot him right after he shot at the president. And then the man who was at the golf course, he was recently, a couple of months ago, he was tried, and he was given life in prison as well. So, I mean, that's probably what's going to happen with Cole. Um, so when we come back, I'm going to talk about some other things, like what else he may have besides Trump derangement syndrome, what other psychiatric disorder. I mean, it's interesting because his manifesto, you don't see any signs of schizophrenia in the manifesto. That would show by looseness of association in his words, like word salad, like what well, I was going to say like what Biden had, but Biden had it for a different reason. He had dementia. Um, but so you don't, I mean, his sentences make sense, and they are sentences, and they're